Hi, good morning everyone. Welcome to another session. Today we are going to discuss about water pollution. In the last class we have discussed about air pollution, a case study in Delhi, and what are Bharat stages and how are they equal to Euro norms. In today's class we'll be talking about water pollution, its control and preventive measures. Let me share the screen with you. So, what is water? What is the importance of water? We all know water is a great solvent. Water is known as elixir of life. Why is water called as elixir of life? Because it is the great solvent capability of water that is the reason for origin of life on a planet. And this water is available on this planet in different ways as surface water bodies and underground water and in the water table. And such water has been abused or misused. Water is a very precious natural resource which is being completely misused. And as a result, all the surface water bodies, most of the surface water bodies have been polluted. Let's talk about what are the various sources of water pollution, how do we treat the polluted waters, and what measures we are supposed to take in order to prevent or control the water pollution. So the special feature of water, water is known as the elixir of life. It is the solvent, greatest solvent. The solvent nature of water is the reason why there is origin of life on this planet. If you look at the hydrosphere, we have surface water bodies. Predominantly 97% is seawater and only 3% is fresh water. So out of the surface water bodies, we have most of them are seas and oceans and rest of them freshwater bodies like rivers, lakes, ponds, streams. And we can only utilize this fresh water. Living organisms largely depend on this 3% of available fresh water. Now, let us find out what are the reasons that led to pollution of these water bodies. We believe that water has the capacity to wash everything, whatever waste we generate. It can be cloth, paper, plastic, anything can be washed away with water. And this very belief that water can wash away everything led to polluting the water bodies. We are not aware of the fact, not taking into cognizance of the fact. This is a textbook statement. The belief that water can wash everything, not taking cognizance of the fact that water bodies are our very lifeline as well as that of all other living organisms. That is, we strongly believe that anything we throw in water can be washed away. Water has a cleaning capacity. And second thing, we are not aware of the fact that water bodies are our lifelines. Without water, we cannot survive. Not only for humans, for all living organisms, water is a lifeline. So we are not aware of this fact, and that is how we started misusing and abusing all the water bodies. Due to this human activity, all the surface water bodies like ponds, lakes, streams, rivers, estuaries, and oceans are becoming polluted in several parts of the world. So the reason behind our water bodies being polluted is ignorance. We are unaware of the what is it, repercussions. We are unaware of the future developments that are going to happen. What happens if we throw something in water? What happens if we throw oil in water? What happens if plastic is just disposed of in water? So we are not aware of all these future repercussions, and we are simply throwing everything in water indiscriminately. This led to the pollution of surface water bodies in several parts of the world. So this scenario is quite common everywhere. Wherever there is a water body, we can see a drainage that is getting drained into that water body. We can see people dumping everything, all waste material into it. It's a quite a common sight. Even in Visakhapatnam coast also, we can come across such scenes. And as a result, humans misusing the water bodies and trying to dispose all kinds of waste, it led to water pollution. And if you have to define water pollution, it is the presence of foreign, organic, and inorganic materials that cause harm to plants, animals, and humans. So we have already learned about what is a pollutant. What is the definition of pollution? A pollutant is any undesirable, unwanted material that is present, and pollution is this unwanted change that causes harm to the living organisms as a whole, plant, animal, or humans, is called as pollution. And the material that is causing this unwanted change, undesirable change, is called as a pollutant. So this definition can equally fit in all types of pollution: air pollution, water pollution, anywhere. So here, if you specifically see what is water pollution, we can simply define it as it is the presence of foreign, organic, and inorganic materials that cause harm to plants, animals, and humans. Now, based on the nature of the pollutants, water pollution can be caused by three varieties of pollutants. So those are biological, chemical, and physical. So if you classify the pollutants, water pollutants, based on their nature, they can be classified into three types. One is biological. What are biological pollutants? Essentially, they are the microbes. They are pathogenic viruses, bacteria, protozoans, algae, elements, all these things. And chemicals. Chemicals are a variety of chemicals. Organic biocides means herbicides, pesticides, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, inorganic phosphates, inorganic nitrates, fluorides. Chemicals, under chemicals comes so many variety of materials. And physical contaminants. Physical pollutants can be heavy metals. In general, industries keep releasing heavy metals like lead, cadmium, mercury, and arsenate. Apart from this, hot water from industries directly released into the water body will cause harm to the ecosystem of the water body. And oil spills from oil cargo ships can also harm the ecosystem of the water body. So like this, based on the nature of the water pollutants, we can classify the water pollutants into biological, chemical, and physical. So what are the various sources of water pollution? Sources can be domestic sewage, industries, fertilizer industries, petrochemical industries, paper industry, textile industry, whatnot. Many types of industries are responsible. So we classify the sources of water pollution will be majorly classified as domestic, industrial, thermal, and marine. This is the basic classification we try to put for water pollution. So in our lesson, we will be predominantly talking about domestic sewage, industrial waste, and thermal majorly. So if your town or city is located in a river bank, these sites can be quite common. So we all know the Ganga, known for its purity. The Ganges river, the mighty river Ganges, is also known for its pollution because it is being abused. Most of the industries keep releasing all the untreated sewage into this river. At the same time, due to religious beliefs, lot of material is being released into this river. So in order to prevent and control the water pollution, our government of India has passed Water Act in 1974. So once we realize that there is a lot of importance for water bodies, it is important for us to maintain the cleanliness of water bodies, to maintain the sanctity of water bodies. Why? Because without water, there is no living. So after realizing this fact, our government has passed the Water Act in 1974. And the aim of this act is to safeguard the water resources and to prevent and control any pollution further. So remember, Water Act is given in the year 1974. Its aim is to safeguard the water resources and to prevent and control the pollution. Let us talk about domestic sewage and its pollution caused to water. So we have classified the water pollution as domestic, industrial, thermal, radioactive, etc., etc., based on the source. So we will talk predominantly about the domestic sewage. So where do you think all the wastewater that is generated in a household is going? Any idea? All the household kitchen waste, bathroom waste, then everything, all the waste generated in a household can be called as a domestic waste. Domestic waste can be generated from domestic homes, then food processing industries, and the basic activities. Okay, so where do you think all this water is going? This water will go to a sewage treatment plant. There it should be treated and then it should be released into a nearby water body. That should happen scientifically. All the wastewaters generated in a household should not be directly released into the water bodies. But most of the times what happens is, before they are treated, this wastewater should be first sent into sewage treatment plant, and once the treatment is completed, the water with minimum impurities should be released into the nearby water stream. But most of the cases that won't happen. Maybe in cities we have sewage treatment plants, but in small towns and villages, directly the drainage water is released into the nearby pond or lake. So these are the common sites. So now let us talk a bit about the composition of domestic sewage. So we generate a lot of household wastewater. Na? So what does this wastewater contain? If you know, out of every 100 ml of the domestic wastewater, there is only 0.1% of impurities. Means 99.9% is just water molecules. Only 0.1% will contain the impurities. And because of this 0.1%, just 0.1%, this water cannot be reused further unless all the impurities are removed, right? So if you look into the composition of the wastewater, domestic wastewater, 99.9% is pure water molecules, 0.1% is impurities. Now, if you classify these impurities based on their density and size, they can be suspended solids, colloidal materials, and dissolved materials. Under suspended solids comes your sand, silt, and clay. Under colloidal materials comes your fecal matter, bacteria, cloth, paper fibers, etc. And the dissolved materials are the inorganic nutrients like phosphate, nitrates, sodium, calcium, etc. So this is the composition of domestic wastewater. Very, very important for us to understand the rest of the things. So your domestic wastewater majorly comprises of pure water, 99.9%. Only 1% of it is containing the impurities. And these impurities are further classified into three groups: suspended solids, colloidal materials, and dissolved materials. This domestic sewage largely consists of organic wastes, bacterial microbial parasites, metallic dust, pesticide, and fertilizer. So most of the domestic sewage does contain organic materials as a waste material. Apart from organic waste material, it has pathogenic microbes, metallic dust, pesticides, and fertilizers. And if there is any solid waste, it can be easily removed. The solid waste of given sewage can be easily removed. All floating ones can be removed by filtration, or heavier ones can be removed by sedimentation. So if there is one big bucket of wastewater, your wastewater contains floating material, heavier material will sediment down, and rest of the material is in a dissolved state. So if it is a physical particulate matter which either floats or which will sink to the bottom, these two things can be easily removed by filtration. But what is difficult for us to remove is those salts and those organic material which is present in a dissolved state. So we should understand here that the domestic sewage consists of two varieties of materials. One is solid particulate material, second one is dissolved material. Solid particulate material can be removed by using physical methods like sedimentation and filtration. But the dissolved material like nitrates, phosphates, other nutrients, and organic material is not easy to be removed. Then how do we remove them? Sewage from homes and hospitals also contain undesirable pathogenic microbes. So Apart from this physical material and the dissolved organic matter, another major contaminant is the pathogenic microbes. And if we are disposing this water containing the disease causing organisms, pathogenic means disease causing organisms, directly into rivers or lakes, that will lead to spread of diseases like dysentery, typhoid, jaundice, cholera, etc. So the domestic sewage predominantly consists of physical particles, dissolved particles, and pathogens. Let us have a look at the common diseases caused by polluted waters from the domestic waste. Amoebic dysentery, typhoid, jaundice, poliomyelitis, viral hepatitis, and cholera. This is the list of common diseases caused by those microbes which are present in the polluted waters. And here it is important for you to know the causative agent. Which organism causes amoebic dysentery? Is it bacterial or viral or protozoan? Typhoid, causative agent. Jaundice, causative agent. What is jaundice? Jaundice is a condition in which liver functioning is not proper. All the bile juice is released into the blood, and as a result the skin becomes yellow in color. Okay, and this jaundice can be caused by bacteria and sometimes the viral hepatitis. It also leads to malfunctioning of the liver. Poliomyelitis and cholera. So I want you to make a list of all these things and find out what is the causative agent of each disease, and how many of them are caused by bacteria and how many of them are caused by viruses. So here we are trying to, now the domestic sewage consists of so much of physical particulate matter, dissolved organic matter, apart from that pathogenic organisms. If we are going to discharge this untreated sewage or raw sewage into a nearby water body, what will happen? We are going to learn now. When untreated domestic sewage water that is rich with organic matter and pathogens is released into nearby water body, what is going to happen to that water body? Some physical and chemical changes takes place in the water body. What are those changes? The dissolved oxygen of the water body will be decreased. Biological oxygen demand of the water body increases. There is extensive growth of algae called as algal blooms, which is going to affect the aquatic life, and it may lead to biomagnification, and it may have its effect on the human health. Eutrophication of the lakes. So these are the topics we are going to learn predominantly in this session. We have seen that domestic wastewater composition, and when the domestic wastewater is not treated, untreated wastewaters from the domestic front released into a water body, what happens there? Decrease in the DO, increase in BOD, algal blooms, effect on aquatic life, biomagnification, effects on human health, eutrophication of the lakes. So we will be talking about each step at a time. Now, what is dissolved oxygen? Dissolved oxygen is the amount of oxygen dissolved in a given quantity of water is called as the dissolved oxygen. So why is it important for us? So we all know water is a liquid, and it has some amount of oxygen and other gases dissolved in a dissolved state. But the amount of the level of oxygen is very, very low in a dissolved state. But still, the quality of water can be assessed by knowing the amount of dissolved oxygen. If the water is having minimum 8 ppm, the dissolved oxygen is measured in terms of parts per million. If dissolved oxygen in a water body is minimum 8 parts per million, that water quality is not bad. If the dissolved oxygen is less than 8 parts per million, then we can say that it is a polluted water. So why are we trying to learn about the dissolved oxygen? Whenever we want to assess the quality of a water body, quality of water, we have to check the dissolved oxygen content in the water sample. If the water sample is having more dissolved oxygen, that water is not polluted. It doesn't have any much of organic matter. If the dissolved oxygen is very less or if it is nil, that means that water is highly polluted. How do we measure the dissolved oxygen in water? It is measured in terms of parts per million. And the amount of dissolved oxygen in water depends on the temperature and the atmospheric pressure in the given system. If water is having, remember, if water is having less than 8 parts per million of oxygen, that means that water is highly polluted. And the dissolution of oxygen in a water body depends on so many factors. What are those factors? It is the degree of aeration, photosynthetic activity, oxygen consumption by organisms, and the temperature. So in a given water body, how much of oxygen can be in a dissolved state depends on so many factors. One is how much of aeration is happening. That means mixing of water body is happening. Second one, how much of photosynthetic activity. Means if there is high photosynthetic activity, there are chances that you have a lot of oxygen being released by this photosynthesis. Apart from this, how many microbes, how many bacteria, how many living organisms are consuming oxygen in that water body also matters. So the dissolved oxygen content of a given water body depends on the degree of aeration the water body is receiving, the number of photosynthetic microbes or photosynthetic organisms that are living in that water body, and the amount of oxygen being consumed by all the heterotrophic aquatic beings. Apart from this, temperature also plays a very major role. Now let us see what is this BOD. BOD stands for biological oxygen demand. Biological oxygen demand, if you have to define it, why are we talking about BOD? We talked about dissolved oxygen. Now, the amount of dissolved oxygen present in a unit volume of water is called as dissolved oxygen. Now, what is this biological oxygen demand? BOD is the amount of DO required for the oxidation of material by microbes is called as biological oxygen demand. That means the demand for oxygen in given water sample by microbes is called as biological oxygen demand. So this biological oxygen demand is directly proportional to the oxidizable organic matter. Suppose there in a given water sample, we want to measure the organic matter. How much of organic matter is present in the given water sample? We know organic matter is found in a dissolved state. Now, how can we actually measure the organic matter? We cannot directly measure organic matter. Instead of that, we are trying to measure the biological oxygen demand of that water sample. Remember, if we want to know the amount of dissolved organic material in given water sample, we cannot directly measure it. We measure the biological oxygen demand of the given water sample. This BOD is directly proportional to the oxidizable organic matter. In other words, BOD is the index to measure the pollution load. If you have high BOD values, that given water is highly polluted. If you have low BOD values, the given water is very less polluted. If there is more sewage, means more organic matter is present, you have more microbes. So when there are more microbes, these microbes try to eat the organic matter. They try to oxidize the organic matter. And in this process, they consume a lot of oxygen. What is this demand for oxygen means? Whenever a water body is having more amount of organic matter, microbes try to make a feast on this organic matter. And in this process, they oxidize the organic matter and they multiply. During this oxidation process, they consume all the dissolved oxygen from the water body. And this is how they actually increase the demand for dissolved oxygen. So what we should understand here is, more if a water body contains more organic matter, it will have more biological oxygen demand. If the water is having high biological oxygen demand, that means that water is highly polluted. This is a straightforward relationship. And here we have to talk about E. coli. Escherichia coli, we all know that it is an organism, bacteria that is present in the gut of humans. Now, E. coli is used as an index for pollution of water. Why? Because E. coli is not generally seen in the any other ecosystem. It is found only in the human gut. But if a water sample consists of E. coli, that means the water sample is polluted with fecal material. That is how E. coli becomes the index of pollution. We can identify that if a given water sample is carrying E. coli bacteria, that means that water sample has been contaminated with fecal matter. And the number of E. coli present per unit water is taken as a parameter of pollution. So E. coli is known as the index of pollution, and the number of E. coli also tells us to what extent the water has been polluted. These two are very, very important for you to know. So we are trying to understand that domestic wastewaters are rich with organic matter. When this organic matter is released directly into a water body, what will happen? So this organic matter becomes food for many microbes. So here you can see the organic components of sewage can be decomposed by bacteria. As I told you, in a sewage, all the physical material can be removed by filtration, but all the dissolved organic material cannot be removed by any physical method or chemical method. So who is going to help us in removing the dissolved organic matter? It is our microbes, the heterotrophic bacteria. And these bacteria, they use this organic components as food. Here we use the term substrate. Bacteria use organic material as substrate. They use this as a source of carbon and energy. That means for them it is a food. And in order to extract energy from the organic material, they have to utilize oxygen. We all know aerobic respiration, whether it is bacteria or higher organism. When it is oxidizing organic material, the ultimate electron acceptor should be oxygen in aerobic respiration. And this is how the dissolved organic matter in a sewage can be removed by bacteria successfully. So simply you will imagine that in a given water sample, that organic matter is a food for bacteria. When it is eating, it is growing and it is multiplying in number. And as a result, as the bacterial population increases, the amount of dissolved organic matter will decrease. So microbes play a very important role in the sewage treatment. They help in removal of the dissolved organic matter. So the question here is, how do we find out the amount of dissolved organic matter in a water body? We can find it out with the help of an index called biological oxygen demand. Okay. It is possible to estimate the biodegradable organic matter in sewage water. Yes, it is possible. How can we do it? It is by measuring the biological oxygen demand. What is this biological oxygen demand? BOD. BOD is the difference in the dissolved oxygen in a water sample from day 1 to day 5. Higher the difference, greater the demand for oxygen. And the BOD is directly proportional to the amount of oxidizable organic matter by microbes. BOD, higher BOD value means higher oxidizable organic matter present in that water sample. So BOD and organic matter in water sample are directly proportional to each other. And another relationship we should know here is, when BOD of water sample is high, its dissolved oxygen will be low. When DO, dissolved oxygen of water sample, is high, its BOD will be low. That means the relationship between BOD and DO they are inversely proportional to each other. Whereas the relationship between BOD and organic matter, they are directly proportional to each other. Very important relationship. You have to understand this. The relation between dissolved oxygen and BOD. If BOD is high, that means DO will be less. They are both are inversely proportional to each other. If BOD is high, that shows that organic matter is also high. Amount of organic matter is directly proportional to the biological oxygen demand, right? Now let us have a look at the definitions of DO and BOD. DO is the amount of dissolved oxygen in a given unit of water sample. It is expressed in parts per million. If water sample is having less than 8 ppm, it is a polluted water. And BOD, the amount of DO required for biological oxidation of the organic matter by microbes in unit volume of water is called as BOD. Simply you can say that it is the BOD is the amount of dissolved oxygen required for biological oxidation of organic material by microbes in given unit of water. It is an indirect measure of the amount of oxidizable organic matter. And BOD and concentration of organic matter are directly proportional to each other. Because we cannot measure the organic matter, we are trying to measure the biological oxygen demand. And the value of BOD is proportional to the organic matter in water. And value of BOD is inversely proportional to the value of DO in water. BOD is an index to measure pollution levels of water. And here we should also know that Escherichia coli, E. coli is also a microbial index that helps us to understand that a given water is polluted or not. And if it is polluted, depending on the number of E. coli present, we can find out whether it is highly polluted or less polluted. So if we want to measure the biological oxygen demand of water, what are we supposed to do? Go to a nearby water stream, collect water from that, and measure the dissolved oxygen. For 4 or 5 days continuously in a closed container, you have to place this sample and measure the dissolved oxygen from day 1 to day 5. If the dissolved oxygen value is more or less the same from day 1 and day 5, that means that water is having less organic matter, so it is less polluted. But if the dissolved oxygen from day 1 is high and day 5 it is very, very low or nil, that shows that the water body is very highly polluted. These are the typical values of BOD. If the BOD value is less than 1500 micrograms per liter of water sample, that is considered as the low BOD. If the BOD value is 1500 to 4000 mg per liter of the water sample, it is medium polluted sample. If the BOD is beyond 4000 mg per liter, then that water sample is highly polluted. So this is about the dissolved oxygen and biological oxygen demand of given water sample or given water body. Now, let us have a look at what happens when sewage is directly discharged into river. What kind of changes takes place? When sewage water without any treatment is directly discharged into river, the following changes takes place. What changes? We know that domestic sewage is rich with biodegradable organic matter. Here, the domestic sewage contains lot of biodegradable organic matter. When the microbes in the river actively degrade this organic matter, they consume a lot of oxygen. As a result, there will be a sharp decline in the dissolved oxygen downstream from the point of discharge. A very important graph was also there in your textbook. Let us talk about this. A simple case study. When domestic sewage water without treatment, if we are directly releasing it into a nearby water body, what will happen? As the sewage mixes up with the river water becomes rich with organic materials. And this biologically degradable organic material will become food for the microbes in the river. And these microbes, they start actively oxidizing this organic matter. And in this process, they consume lot of oxygen. And as a result, the dissolved oxygen rates in the river will drastically come down. They will decline from the point of discharge, downstream from the point of discharge. And these steps are clearly depicted in the given graph. So this is your textual representation of this condition. As you can see here, this is the concentration of dissolved oxygen, right? And this is the direction of the flow of river. You have to imagine here. So this is the river flowing through your city or town or village. And at this point, not here at the starting point, at this point, we are discharging all the sewage from our domestic front. Before release, at this location, the river water is having high amounts of dissolved oxygen. You can see here this pink line depicts the dissolved oxygen of water body. This blue line depicts the biological oxygen demand of that water body. So if you have a look at this, before release, the dissolved oxygen, the concentration of the dissolved oxygen is very, very high. And the biological oxygen demand here is very, very low. But once we added the sewage, so this is the point of addition of sewage. Once we added the sewage here, downstream to this point, this is called as the downstream, and before this is called as the upstream. So you can see here, this is the discharge point. This is the discharge point. And here, as soon as we added the organic matter to this river water, there is a sharp decline in the dissolved oxygen. And there is a sharp increase in the biological oxygen demand. So this is what happens as soon as we add domestic sewage rich with organic matter to a river. Right from the point of discharge, there is a sharp drop in the dissolved oxygen concentration, and there is a sharp inclination of the biological oxygen demand. And downstream to this point, because of the increase in the BOD, the dissolved oxygen has come down, and as a result, the fish and the other freshwater organisms will die. That means as soon as we added this, there is a drop of DO that led to the killing of fish and other freshwater organisms. Now, how long will this condition prevail? High BOD and low DO. How long this condition will prevail? It will prevail up to some extent. Because this river is flowing continuously, once all the organic matter is utilized, once all the organic matter that we released has been utilized by the microbes, naturally the BOD will come down and the dissolved oxygen will increase, right? So once the dissolved oxygen levels are restored, once they come to a healthy state, naturally the clean water organisms will reappear. So this is what happens. This is the effect of sewage discharge on some important characteristics of river. So it's highly essential for you to understand what happens here. You can look at the graph. Concentration of dissolved oxygen. You can mention it in your textbook. Concentration of dissolved oxygen is on y-axis. Direction of flow on the x-axis. And sewage was discharged at some point on the x-axis. Before the discharge of sewage, dissolved oxygen levels are very high and BOD is very low. But as soon as the sewage water is discharged, there is a drop of dissolved oxygen immediately, and there is increase in the biological oxygen demand. Due to sharp decline of the DO at this point, all the freshwater organisms will die out of suffocation. They die out of choking. And this BOD and high BOD and low DO condition will be there for a while until all the organic matter is consumed. Once all the organic matter is completed, again the BOD levels will drop. That means the demand for oxygen will drop, and slowly the dissolved oxygen levels will rise in the river water. And now again the freshwater animals will reappear in the water body. Now this takes place in a scenario where we release sewage only at once. If you release sewage only at once, it happens like this initially, and slowly again the condition will reverse. But if we are continuously releasing sewage without stopping, this is one batch addition. But if we are continuously adding, what will happen? Try to depict a graph for such thing. So this is about the domestic sewage. Now, the next one we are going to talk about is algal blooms. Before that, we'll talk a bit about heavy metals. Unlike your domestic sewage, waters from industries like petroleum, paper, metal processing, and chemical manufacturing, they contain toxic substances. So as we have already discussed, industrial wastewaters contain variety of chemicals like phenols, so many materials. So especially the petroleum industry, paper manufacturing industry, metal extraction industry, chemical manufacturers, etc. All of them release lot of toxic substances. Out of these toxic substances, we'll talk about heavy metals. Heavy metals like mercury, cadmium, copper, and lead. Why are they called as heavy metals? What is the criteria to call a metal as a heavy metal? The criteria is their density is more than 5 grams per centimeter cube. So we should know that a heavy metal is a metal whose density is more than 5 grams per centimeter cube. Keep this value in your mind. Examples of such heavy metals are mercury, cadmium, copper, and lead. So here what we have to know is many chemical industries release toxic materials, out of which heavy metals are more toxic, highly toxic, and a variety of organic compounds. A metal is said to be heavy metal when its density is higher than 5 grams per centimeter cube. Now, let's talk about algal blooms. What is an algal bloom? Excessive growth of algae due to presence of high amounts of nitrates and phosphates. Carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. You can see here in the diagrammatic depiction itself, you can see that algae is making a feast on the available carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So when a water body is enriched, in general, natural water bodies may nutrients will be there, but they will be in a very, very less amount so that they do not allow the excessive growth of any living organism. But under artificial conditions, due to man-made conditions, due to release of sewage water, release of agricultural runoff especially, nitrates and phosphates. So, you know, the farmers use a lot of fertilizer and most of the fertilizer will be retained on the soil itself. Very little will be absorbed by the plants. And all these excess nutrients, especially nitrates and phosphates, which are left on the soil, they will be run away along with rainwater and they'll reach to the nearby ponds and lakes. So when nitrates and phosphates, you know nitrates and phosphates, what is the role in the growth of plants? In general, in natural conditions, nitrates and phosphates are the limiting nutrients. They are available in very low concentrations and that is how they control the rate of growth of plants or algae in natural surroundings. But due to the addition of agricultural runoff, due to artificial ways, lot of nitrates and phosphates are added into the nearby water bodies. When there is more nitrate and phosphate, the algae living in the water body can grow very well and it grows excessively. When algae is growing very excessively, it forms a layer like this and it does not allow the oxygen to get in and it leads to suffocation of the lake. Apart from this, some toxins are also accumulated, right? So this is how an um, a water body which is having algal blooms will look like. Maybe you must have seen while you travel in the trains and all, we come across fields. As we cross the fields, we come across water bodies which are filled with lot of algae. And this excessive growth of algae is called as algal bloom. When anything is growing in excess, that will disrupt the ecosystem, that will destroy the balance of the ecosystem, that will cause harm to the growth of other living organisms. Large amounts of nutrients. So why do we have algal blooms? Let's try to define what is algal bloom. Algal bloom is excessive growth of planktonic algae. What is a planktonic algae? Free floating algae is called as planktonic algae. due to the presence of large amount of nutrients like nitrates and phosphates. Remember, nitrates and phosphates are limiting nutrients in natural surroundings. They regulate the growth of plants and algae. But due to artificial means, large quantities of nitrates and phosphates are added to water bodies. And due to this availability, there is extensive growth or excessive growth of the planktonic algae. Planktonic means free floaters. When there is excessive growth of algae, what will happen is it imparts distinct color to the water body. As you can see here, the water body is having some greenish layers, and it will give some kind of order also. Not only the color will be changed, the turbidity of the water will be high, and water quality is deteriorated, and it gives some kind of, it imparts some unpleasant odor to the water body. Excessive growth of algae will change the physical and chemical properties of that water body. Color of water is changed, its chemical dissolved oxygen levels will come down, its chemical quality will deteriorate, it cannot support aquatic living organisms, and it leads to fish kill. Fish mortality will be high. And some bloom forming algae are extremely toxic to humans and animals. Just remember algal blooms as 4 points. Excessive growth of free floating algae due to presence of high amounts of nitrates and phosphates. That is algal bloom. What happens when there is algal bloom in a water body? It gives distinctive color to the water body, and it imparts unpleasant odor to the water body. And third point is algal blooms will deteriorate the quality of water. There is no quality of water. This water quality has come down, so it cannot support any aquatic living forms. As a result, there will be large number of fishes who will be dying. Some algal blooms are quite toxic. They are extremely toxic to humans and animals. So can you name one or two organisms who causes toxic algal blooms? You must have learned in biological classification. Yes? Try to recollect. So this is one cartoon that shows that a fish is choking to death out of suffocation due to polluted waters. Now, next topic is, so we have seen that when domestic waters are released, when the water body is enriched with more number of nutrients, it leads to excessive growth of algae. Apart from this, there are some plants who can grow excessively at a rapid rate in polluted waters. Let us see who are those. Eichhornia, Eichhornia crassipes. Where we have come across Eichhornia, I think in the very first lesson, morphology, we have learned Eichhornia. Eichhornia is called as terror of Bengal. Its common name is water hyacinth. Its mode of reproduction is by offset. So we all know that Eichhornia is an aquatic plant, and this aquatic plant was not a native of our country. It was introduced into a country due to its beautiful flowers. And the common name of Eichhornia is water hyacinth. Not all water hyacinths are highly invasive. Eichhornia crassipes, underline this, Eichhornia crassipes is the species of Eichhornia which is known as the world's most problematic weed. It is also called as terror of Bengal. It is an alien species. Alien means which is not native to our country. And it is a highly invasive species, means it can grow at the rate of other native varieties. Its ability to grow is so high that it chokes the water bodies and obstructs the waterways. And it grows abundantly in eutrophicated water bodies, means those water bodies which are highly polluted. In such water bodies, just like how there is excessive growth of algae, Eichhornia can also grow excessively and luxuriantly in polluted waters, right? So the rate at which it can grow will outbeat the rate at which we can remove them. Means if there is one big lake, we started removing the Eichhornia from one end. By the time we reach to the other end, this side there is a lot of growth. So how are they able to grow at a rapid rate? What is the mode of reproduction they have? Offset is the mode of reproduction of Eichhornia. So what you should know is Eichhornia crassipes is the species which is an invasive species. Invasive means which can grow at the cost of other species. It is an alien species. It is not a native of our country. It was introduced to our country due to its beautiful flowers. And once upon a time, it has occupied the whole Kolkata, the Hubli River, and so it is called as the Terror of Bengal. Its common name is water hyacinth. It is otherwise called as the world's most problematic weed. Its ability to grow outbeats our ability to remove it. It chokes the water bodies and obstructs the waterways. It can grow abundantly eutrophicated water bodies. Excessive growth will lead to imbalance in the ecosystem dynamics of water body, right? So remember, anything in excess is always leading to imbalance. It causes harm. It is applicable to everything. So here you can see that Eichhornia crassipes, it has grown so luxuriantly in that polluted lake or some water body, and you can see the beautiful flowering there. Maybe it's not a completely new plant for you. You must have explored this when you traveled by train or some lake sometime, especially those from West Bengal and Kolkata. Look at the beautiful flowers here. These are the beautiful flowers, and this is the plant actually. This is so beautiful to look at. Eichhornia crassipes. Now the next topic will be eutrophication.